What's up everyone, welcome to Nodes and welcome to our second part of our TypeORM Crash Course. And obviously in the previous part we have already discussed the concept of relations. We have discussed one-to-one relation and how we studied these concepts with the help of that one-to-one relation. Okay, so let's jump our journey to one-to-many. Okay, and let's see that how one-to-many goes and how there is a scenario in which we can implement one-to-many relation in our TypeORM. Okay, so here I've let me just zoom in for the diagram. Okay, so here you can see that I've created a simple relation between users and to-do. So since in an application one user can have many to-dos. Okay, but if you move on from to-do to user, if you move from right to left, you can see that each to-do will only belong to a single user. So it is one-to-many from left to right. So let me just write this thing. So it's one-to-many from left to right, from left to right, okay, which is that user with our to do. Okay, but if you see from right to left, it is many to one. Okay, so many to one from right to left, which is our to do to our user. Okay, so that's the overall concept. So let's implement this scenario in our application, and let's see that how we can implement with TypeORM. So let me just open my VS Code and my data grip side by side. Okay, so for now let's say that since we are having a user with to do, so I will keep our user entity the same for now. And let's say for now it is making a relation of one-to-one with profile, okay, which we have studied. So now let's create another relation with our to do. Okay, so for that the very first thing we have to do is to obviously go and create our to do entity. So let me say that to do dot entity dot ts. Okay, so it's our to do entity. So let's copy any template. Let's say I'm taking the template of profile, and let's go to do and let's paste it over here. Okay, so let's change some parameters. Let's say it is our to do, so I will mark the table name as to do, and let's change the class name to to do. And let's say our to do will be having only two properties, which is our title and description and is completed. Okay, so there are total three properties. So let's say we are having title for here, and title should always be there, so it is nullable to false. And let's say we are also having description, so DES CRIPTIO, and description can be null, so that's why it is nullable to true. And for some reason we need one more parameter, so let's copy this thing and let's paste it over here. Okay, so let's say we are having is completed, so is completed, and this will be a boolean. Okay, and it by default, obviously whenever you will create that to do, so the is complete will be false. So I can say that I can define the default value as false right over here. Okay, for those who are still confused that where I'm getting these values from, so you guys can check the documentation. Okay, so if I somehow bring my official TypeORM documentation into our picture, so here you can see, if I make it a little bit bigger, so here you can see that if you go to our decorator reference, which is at the last of this documentation, and here if you see in our decorator reference, you will get all the options or regarding all the decorators being used. Okay, so since you want to know that what we can do with column decorators, so you can click on this column, and inside this column decorator, these are the properties which you guys can pass for now. Okay, so again, there is too much involvement regarding these properties, but again I would suggest you guys to go and study these. Okay, so here you can see it is type name, you can define the length, you can define the width. Okay, so for now we have used our nullable property as well as our default property. So let me search for default. Yeah, right, you are here, you can see that it is default. Okay, so again you can go and further study that what are the options which we can pass inside our this column decorator. Okay, so let me just move it back and let's start our proceedings. So for now we have created our entity class for our to do, so it's id, title, description, and it is completed. Okay, and for now I will just remove this relation from here. Okay, so it's our simple to do entity. Let's save this thing, and the second step is obviously once you create your to do entity, you have to register it in your data source. So let's open our data source and let's move up and let's import our to do. Okay, So let's import our to-do from entities to to-do.entity, and then we can come over here and register our to-do. And once you save this thing, you open your integrated terminal. So let's start our application in development mode. So once you start it, since we have enabled the synchronization to true, it will automatically go and map this to-do as a database table in your Postgres database. Okay, so if you go to a data grip, and somehow if I come to my databases and let's refresh this thing, so let's see inside our test database schema public, and let's refresh our public, and you can see now we are having three different tables. Okay, and if you move, so you can see that I'm having this to do table right over here. So it's to do, profile, and user. Okay, so let me hide this thing for now. So we are having our users, we are having our profiles, and since we are also having our to-dos, in which we are having ID, title, description, and is completed. Okay, so now if you go to my Obsidian, so we are done with our user entity and to-do entity, and obviously the next step is to define our relation, which is one to many. So for that, let's say that we are going from left to right. So from left to right, it is one to many. Okay, so let's define this relation one to many. Okay, so for this, I will just make VS Code bigger, so that I want one concept which should be explained. Okay, so let's go to our user entity, and now we know that one user can have many to do. So let me just split this to right. So am I having to split to, let's say, left? And here I'm having my to-do entity. So it's side by side comparison. Okay, so we are having user on our left and to-do on our right. So let's say I want to create a relation of user with our to-do, and that relation is obviously one to many. So let me just come over here, and since I know that one user can have many to-dos, so for that I can do that. I can create a attribute of to-dos, which will be a array of to do entity type. Okay, so it is an array of to do entity type. Okay, so it is an array because we know that one user can have multiple to do, so that's why it is an array. And for marking this as a one to many relation, again we have to import a decorator, and that decorator is obviously is one to many. Okay, and we will use this decorator to mark this one as one to many relation. So let's say at the rate one to many, and inside this one to many relation, we have to first define that with which entity we want our relation with. Okay, so since we know that we want our relation with our to do, so we will pass an arrow function as a first attribute, and that first attribute will return that entity with which we want to create our relation. So in our case, it will be to do. Okay, so the next option is obviously is the relation that with which attribute we want to create our relation with. Okay, so since there is no attribute right over here, so we have to create that thing. So let's say if we go from right to left, we know that each to do will have a user, so I can mark something like user of type user right over here. Okay, so we know that each to do will be having a single user. Okay, so what I can do here is I can say that okay, go and create one to many relation with our to do entity, and specifically with this user attribute right over here. And for that, you have to just define an arrow function in which you will get a to do as a parameter, which will be the object of this to do entity. And once you get that object, you will reference or return this to do dot user. So it's to do dot user. Okay, so that's the overall concept of how you can map a one to many relation. Okay, so then since we know that from left to right it's one to many, but from right to left it is many to one, so for that you can use at the rate a many to one decorator from here. Okay, so it's many to one, and again this decorator will be imported from our TypeORM. So many to one, and inside our many to one you can define the reverse relationship, since we know that it is making a relation with our user. So I will mark it something like that. The very first thing is to define which entity we are creating the relation with. So we are creating the to do relation with our user entity, so I can mark user over here. And the second attribute is obviously that which attribute of user is linked with this relation. Okay, since we know that the only attribute linked with this relation is this to do's. Okay, so what I can do is I can pass arrow function in our second parameter, in which you will get a user object, and that user object will be able to access our user dot to do's. Okay, so it's a concept of creating our one to many relation from left to right, and right to left we are creating many to one relation. Okay, so one way to access is that if you click on user dot to do's, it will take you here, and if you click on todo.user, it will take you here. So this is a symbol or a process in which you can understand that yeah, we have created our relations correctly. Okay, so obviously that's the only part which we have to do once you are done with creating relations. So the next step is obviously to perform some actions regarding our this relation which we have created. So let me just cut this for now, and let's go to our entry point of application. Okay, so now let's say I want to just remove all this, I will comment this thing, I will cut this thing for now, and I will just paste it at the end of file, just for you guys to have a reference. Okay, so let's start the proceeding. So let's say we want to create some operations. Okay, so if I open my data grid, and let's say uh, for now if I come to my profile right now, let's say we are not dealing with profile, since we are dealing only with our users, and for now this user is linked with that profile. Okay, so let's say let's for now create a new user. Okay, so let's say we are creating a user. Okay, for simplicity, let's want to change the scenario. Okay, so let's say for now I don't want the relation of user with our profile. Okay, so let me just comment this thing, and let's go to profile, and let's say that right now the profile is not linked with our user. So let's save this thing. Okay, so for now the only thing is that profile does exist in our database, but it is not having relation with any user. Okay, so I've commented all those things. So let's open our integrated terminal, everything is working fine, and let's now move on to our database schema. So let's now start the proceedings. Okay, so we are having a relation of user with one to many with our to-dos. So let's go to our application entry point. So let's start the proceeding. So let's say the very first thing is obviously to get our user repository. User repository is equals to new, so not new, we will get our data source, and then from data source we will get our repository of our user entity. Okay, so once you get the repository, you guys can save a user. So let's create some users. Okay, so let's say const let's say user equals to new user, and let's say user dot name, first name is equals to, let's say Asad, and let's say user dot last name is equals to, let's say it's Javed. Okay, and obviously since we know that we will be having is active property, which will by default be, it will be true. Okay, and one more thing which we are having is to do's. Okay, so now at this point we have to uh, provide our to-dos which will automatically be linked with our this user. Okay, and for performing this thing, you have to obviously, we have discussed in our previous part one that you have to enable cascading. Okay, so let's go to user, and inside our third parameter we will say cascade to true. Okay, so that whenever we embed our to-dos with the user object, it will automatically get saved in our databases. Okay, so let's create some to-dos. So let's say we are having const to-dos equals to let's say new to-do. Okay, and let's for now let's say it's a single to-do, let's mark it to-do one. Okay, so let's say to-do one dot title is equal to, let's say learn TypeORM. Okay, and let's say to-do one dot description is equals to let's say I will keep the same. Okay, learn TypeORM with notes. Okay, so that's all, and obviously I will not be providing the third property, which is this is completed, because I know that by default TypeORM will automatically place the default value as false. Okay, so that's the overall concept here. So let's save this thing, and let's now, if I go to my app.ts, we have created our very first to do. So let's copy this thing and let's paste it 3 more times. Okay, so this is our to do 2, and let's make it to do 2, and to do 2 is, let's say learn React and learn React with nodes. Okay, let's say are having to do 3 as well. So let's mark to do 3 to something like learn Nest.js and learn Nest.js with nodes. Okay, the reason I'm using Nest.js, React and TypeORM is because I've covered all those topics on my channel. So let's make it one line different. So now we are having 3 different to-dos, and we can pass these 3 to-dos in an array. So it's to do 1 comma to do 2 comma to do 3. Okay, so since we have enabled our cascading on our this user side with the relation of to do, so it will obviously create 3 to dos and will link those 3 to dos with this user object. Okay, and the final step is obviously let saved user, and then we will use our await since it will be an asynchronous operation, and we will use our user repository dot save, and we will save our this user. Okay, and once we save this thing, we that user will be also will be returned in this variable, and then we can just return this in our JSON with our saved user. Okay, so let's save this thing. Let's open our integrated terminal and let's see that there is no changes right over here. Everything is working fine. And now for now, let's say I'm going to hit my request. So let's move it to left and let's make it to something bigger. Okay, so this is our data grip and this is our VS Code. So let's go to Thunder client. So Thunder client, and we are having this request right over here. Let's hide this thing and let's hit the request. So when you hit send, you can see that 200 okay, and now we are having that object which is our user object. Okay, first name is Asad, last name is Javed, ejective is true, and we are having 3 different to dos. Okay, number 1 is learn TypeORM, learn React, as well as learn Nest.js. Okay, so these 3 to dos are obviously linked with that specific user, and you can see that the same changes has been reflected in our database. So if I refresh this thing, let's move on to refreshment, and here you can see that when I refresh, I'm having a user with ID 3, and that one is having Asad and Javed. Okay, with the name Asad and Javed. And once you go to our to-dos and let's refresh our to-dos, you can see we are having 3 different to-dos. Okay, which are having uh, learn TypeORM, learn React, and learn Nest.js with ID 1, 2, and 3. Now, obviously, whenever we create a one-to-many relation, the foreign key remains on our many side. Now you can see that I am having one extra attribute of user ID right over here, which is acting as a foreign key to our user's main primary key. Okay, so it's linked with user ID 3. Okay, so that's the overall concept of creating a one-to-many relation and saving one-to-many relation. Okay, and let's say for somehow if I go back to my code, let's make it big. Let's for now go to our app.ts. Let's for now let's hide this thing, and let's say now I want to find users with specific to dos. Okay, so for that obviously I can come over here and let's say let all users equals to await, and then I can say user repo dot find, and inside find obviously you can define the relations, which relation you want to load. In that case it will be a lazy relation, but if you want the relation to automatically be loaded, so you have to mark eager to true. So let's say I don't want eager one. I will come over here and I will define our relations in an array with the name of to dos. Okay, and you must be careful with this word because this to dos must be equal to this to do attribute which you have defined. Okay, so once you save this thing, so let's save this thing and let's comment this one out, and let's pass this users over here. So if you save this thing, and once you save this thing, let's see our application. You can see that everything is working fine for now, and if you hit your request, you can see the same response right over here. So we are having our user with our 3 different to dos. Okay, so that's the concept here. So let's say I want to change some scenario. Okay, since we are going from left to right, so now let's say that we want to go to right to left. Okay, so for that I will just duplicate this thing, I will comment this thing, and now I want our to do repository. Okay, so it's to do repo, and this will also be to do repository. Okay, let's save this thing, and now obviously I want to go from right to left since we have made this two-way relation. You can see that this to do is also having a relation of many to one with the user. Okay, so that's why we can go from right to left, from to do to our user. So I will get our to do repository, and now obviously this will be all to dos, and we will use that to do repository, and then we will find our relations, and that relation is obviously user. Okay, and this is user because obviously if you go to our to do entity, you can see that this is the relation which we are talking about, user. Okay, so once you mark that, let's send it to our response. Let's save this thing, and let's see that our application, let's see that okay, yeah, it is restarted. Now let's go to our Thunder client, let's hit the request, and now you can see that we are having an array of to-dos, and each to-do is having that user. Okay, so learn TypeORM belongs to Asad Javed, and learn React also belongs to Asad Javed, and learn Nest.js also belongs to Asad Javed. So this is the concept of going from left to right and right to left. Okay, so this is the concept of creating relation of one to many and many to one. Now let's move on to our second scenario. Okay, so let's say again, I've told you that you guys can use Cascade or eager array relation or two-way relation with every relations. Okay, so since we have discussed one-to-one with our this scenario and one-to-many with this scenario, so again you guys can use the same concepts of cascading, on delete, eager array relation, nullable, or two-way relation with all those concepts. Okay, so right now we have discussed cascade, we have discussed eager and lazy relation, we have also discussed two-way relation. And obviously we are having one more concept which is on delete, and we are having one more concept of nullable relation. Okay, so I will discuss these in the coming on section. Right now I don't think it is the time to discuss these topics. Okay, so let's move on to our many to many relation. Okay, so many to many relation is obviously whenever we have one to many relation from both the side, we convert that relation to many. So you can see that if I talk about a student, so one student can have many courses, but one course can also have many students. Okay, so it's one to many from both the sides. So when we concur this scenario that in which we are having one to many on both sides, so what we do is we convert this into a many to many relation. So right over here you can see if I go from left to right, so it is still one to many, because one student can opt in many courses. Okay, but if you go from right to left, okay, in that case it is also one to many. Okay, and the reason behind this is obviously because one course can have also many students. Okay, so one course can have many students as well. Okay, so that's why it is one to many. So when you get a scenario of one to many from both left to right and right to left, in that case we go with many to many, in which we will create our third table, which will be having two different IDs which will act as foreign key, one for student and one for course. Okay, so that's the whole concept of many to many. Okay, so again we won't be creating this table right over here because this is a task of our TypeORM to do for us. Okay, so let's implement this many to many relation. Okay, so let's come since we are not having student and courses, so let's create those entities first and let's implement the scenario. Okay, so let's go to our let's say file explorer. Okay, and let's create a very first entity. Let's say it's student dot entity dot ts. Okay, so let's copy any template. Let's copy this thing, let's paste it over here. Let's mark this as student, and right now let's say it is our student, which will be having our ID, and let's say what are the attributes. So it's ID, roll number, first name, last name, and age. Okay, so ID, this will be our roll number, and let's say it is first name, and let's say copy this thing, paste it over here, last name, and let's say we are having one more attribute which is our age. Okay, so this is age and this will be of type number. Okay, and let's remove all this for now. Okay, so we are having roll number which is of type string, first name, last name is also a string, and we are having an age. Okay, and obviously for now the roll number should not be null, as well as our first name should also be not null, and let's say our last name should also not be null, and let's say age should not be null as well. Okay, so these are the three and four attributes which we have defined right now, and our student entity is ready to go for now. Okay, so let's copy this one and let's create our course entity. Okay, so let's new file and let's say course dot entity dot ts, and let's paste it over here. Okay, and let's mark this as course, and we know that in our courses we are only having title and code. So it's a course right over here. Let's mark it course. We are having the title of the course and we are having the code of the course. Okay, so it's our code. Okay, so let's remove these two attributes, and that's the overall concept of creating our course entity. So let's go to our data source. So let's find our data source and let's come over here and mark student as well as course in our data source. Okay, so we have registered these two entities, student and courses. Now if you open your integrated terminal, you can see that automatically create table student and create table course has automatically been created by TypeORM because synchronization is enabled. Okay, so if you go to our data grid, let's make it let's make it bigger for now. Okay, and if you go to our databases, so let's refresh our tables. So now you can see I'm having my course table with ID, title and code, and we are also having our student table with ID, roll number, first name, last name and age. So let me just come to here. Okay, so that's the entities which has been mapped to our database tables. Okay, so now obviously since we are done with creating both the entities, now the next step is to create our relations. Okay, so for that let's go to our student entity and let's make it to split to left. Okay, so this is our student and this is our course entity. Okay, so it's side by side. Let me collapse that file explorer. Okay, so it's our student and it's our course. So now let's create our many to many relation. Okay, obviously I will create relation two-way so that you can easily go from left to right or right to left. Okay, so let's say the very first thing you have to do is to again import a decorator. In that case it will be obviously many to many. Okay, so many to many decorator, and with the help of this many to many decorator we will, sorry, it is not at the rate here, it will just be at the rate many to many. Okay, let's remove that line. Okay, so at the rate many to many is pulled from a TypeORM, and now obviously with that decorator we need one more extra decorator which will be uh, join table. Okay, so with join table you will mark tell basically TypeORM that obviously it is a many to many, so you need to join a third table which is this one. Okay, which is this one we are talking about. Okay, so let's say since we know that it is one to many from both sides, so student will be having many courses. So let's say it's courses attribute right over here, and that will be a type of course which will be an array of courses. Okay, and for marking it, so we can say that at the rate many to many, and let's say this is creating a relation with our entity, and that entity is obviously our course entity. Okay, so once you define your very first attribute, which is your this course entity, the next step you can obviously do is to tell that which attribute, by which attribute this course is being linked. Okay, so many to many relation is with course entity, but specifically with which attribute of course entity this relation is being linked. Okay, so for that obviously you have to define one more attribute in which you can tell that, let's say for now I will say that I will get a course entity object here, and I will say course dot, and since we know that inside course right now we are having no attribute which will go from right to left. Okay, so for that I know that each course will also be having a lot of students. Okay, so I can say that I will be having students here which will be of type student entity, and this will be an array. So now I can say that course dot students. Okay, so what this will do is this will go and create a relation, and relation specifically with course, and with which attribute of course, with attribute of students. Okay, so that's the overall concept right over here. Okay, so let's say that we are going now from left to right. Okay, so let's say for left to right again you can go from here, and which will be one to many because one course can have many students as well. So the next thing you can do is obviously for creating your third table you can use this decorator which is join table. Okay, and this join table is only telling TypeORM that yeah, we need a third table, and that third table will be linking our foreign keys. Okay, so that's only the reason we are using join table here. Okay, so we have defined from left to right. Now from right to left obviously we know that it will be a one to many relation, so let's go with one to many, and here we will define that it is one to many with our course, sorry, not course, with our student, and in the second attribute it will be student with a small, because it will be object of student entity, and with specifically with which attribute we want to create, with this attribute which is courses. Okay, so it will be student dot courses. Okay, so that's the overall concept. So let me just format our code, and let me just collapse this thing to somewhat here. Okay, so that's the overall concept in which we are defining that obviously from our student to our courses it is a many to many relationship. Okay, but from many to many relationship from with the decorator at the join table which will mark it as one to many relation, and from our courses to our student we are having one-to-many relation. Okay, so that's the overall concept of creating many-to-many relation in a bidirectional way. Let's save this thing and let's see in our data grid that what changes have been made. Okay, so let's go to our student, and now you can see if I refresh this thing. Now you can see that we are having our third table, which is student underscore courses underscore course. And if you click over here, you can see that we are having two foreign keys, student ID and course ID. And this student ID will refer to your student table, and this course ID will refer to your course. Okay, so that's the overall concept of creating this third table. And obviously, by reading these decorators, it has automatically detected that yeah, we need a third table to create our many-to-many relationship. Okay, so now we have understood how to create our many-to-many relationship. So let's understand how we can perform operations on this scenario. Okay, so let's close this thing for now. Let's go to app.ts. Okay, so for now let me just copy this all things. Let's cut it from here and let's paste it right underneath this, and let's comment it all. Okay, so this is just there for your reference. Okay, so let's save this thing and let's get to our proceedings. So the very first thing we have to do is to obviously save some records against our user with our courses. Sorry, not user but our students. Okay, so let's first get our student repository, and let's say it's equals to data source dot get repository, and this will be the repository of our student. Okay, so that's the overall concept. So once we get our students, we need to save some of them. So let's say that student, create a student here. So student equals to new student. So for now, let's say student dot age is equals to 22, and let's say student dot first name equals to, let's say this time it's Ahmed, and let's say student dot last name is equals to, let's say Asad, Ahmed Asad it is. Okay, and let's say student dot roll number, and that is equal to, let's say it's st-001. Okay, and let's say student dot, okay, so we are done with our age, first name, last name and roll number, and now it's courses. Okay, so now we know that from our student to our courses we are having a one-to-many relation, so it will be an array. Okay, so let's create some courses right over here. Okay, so let's say it's const course 1 equals to new course. Okay, so once you create your course, so it's course 1 dot our code, let's say it's cs 001, and let's say course 1 dot title is equal to, let's say the title is equal to computer programming. Okay, so that's one course here. So let's duplicate this thing. Okay, so once you duplicate this thing, let's say let's mark it to course 2, and let's say it's course 2 right over here. Okay, so it's CS002, and let's say it's about not computer programming, it's about web programming. Okay, so let me make it capital with W. So we have two courses, so now let's pass them as course 1 comma course 2. Okay, so once you are done with this scenario, what you can do is obviously we know that since we are directly appending the courses in our student object, so for that we need to mark it cascade to true. So let's open our student entity, and in this relation we will define our third parameter as an object in which we will define that cascade is true. Okay, so let's save this thing, let's go back, and now the only step is to get our user. So let saved, okay, not user, let's saved student is equals to it will be an asynchronous operation, so await, and then we will use our student repository dot save, and then we will pass our this student. Okay, so once that student is saved, we can get back that student, and let's return that in our response dot JSON, and then we will be having our saved student. So let's save this thing, and if somehow, let's say I want to open my console, and you can see that everything is working fine for now. So let's hit this request, and let's see that what we get. Okay, so if I send this thing, you can see that now we are getting a object saved student. Okay, it's saved student because so I've passed this one as an object, so that's why it is giving me a saved student. Okay, so that's saved student, it's age 22, first name, last name, roll number is the same, and we know that that student is obviously having two courses, course 1 and obviously course 2. Okay, so that's the concept of saving the relation. And now let's say we have saved this thing. So what we can do is, in our next step, let's comment this thing. And now let's say we want to get our students with their respective courses. So for that, obviously I will change this one to find, and let's remove this thing for now. So this will go and find all the students. Okay, now let's say that you have to define your relation here, so that it can find and load with that relation, but this time I'm going with eager. Okay, so for that, let's say I want to go to our student entity, and here I will mark eager to true. So this will tell TypeORM that whenever student entity is requested, you have to load this relation with that. Okay, so you can easily get it. So let's say for now everything is working fine. Let's save this thing and let's open our console. And yeah, everything has been restarted, and this is our request. So let's send this thing. So once you send this thing, you can see that we are getting again our saved student with an array, because the find query result, this find one, this returns all the students. For now we are only having one single student in our array. Okay, so it's an array of a student with their specific courses. Okay, so that's the concept of getting your relations. Okay, so since now you can see that we have not defined any relations here, we are just using eager equal to true. Okay, so that's the concept of going from left to right. Now let's say that we want to go from right to left. Okay, so let's comment this thing. Let's duplicate this thing and comment this thing, and let's say now we need our courses repo, and I want to get all the courses with their respective students. So it's courses repo, and now we can get our courses repository with this thing. And now once you get your courses repository, you can go and let's say this will be all courses. Okay, and now let's remove this thing. Okay, I was passing them as an object, so let's all courses. And now once you get, so I can use the course repository, and then we can find. Okay, now specifically if you want to use eager on this side, the problem here is that I'm already if you want to use eager on this side, you can too, because we are already using eager on our student side. Okay, so if you go to our student side, we are already using eager over here. So if you use eager on both sides, it will stuck into an infinite loop. So that's we have discussed in our part 1. Okay, so for now, let's say I will by default call the relation with our relations. So let's say it's relations, and inside relations I will mark it to something like students. Okay, and obviously since we know that courses are having a relation with the students, so if you go to our courses, you can see this is the attribute which we are talking about. Okay, so make sure that this one is same as this one right over here. Okay, so let's save this thing, and once we get all our courses, so obviously whenever we get all the students, we will be by default getting the course inside them, because we have marked eager to true right over here. So for now, let's remove this thing. Okay, so I don't want eager, so let's save this thing and let's open our console. Everything is working fine for now, and if I hit our request, okay, so we are getting something which is not good. So let's say that what is the error. Okay, so the error is still there. So let's see that what is being wrong. So let's, if I go to our student one, it's working for now. We are having many to many relation. And if I go to a course, okay, yeah, sorry, yeah, that's a mistake. It's not one to many from this side, but it will be many to many. Okay, so it's many to many. Okay, so obviously since it's a many to many relationship, so we have to define at that many to many and many to many on both sides. Okay, so I don't know why I was using one to many on this side. Okay, so yeah, that's a mistake. I will mark it when I will do this thing in our video. Okay, so let's save this thing, and for now let's open our console. Yeah, everything is working fine for now. Let's hit the request. Yeah, so now you can see it's working. Okay, so it's our courses which are having their specific students. So it's course 1, and this is course 2, which is web programming with their specific students. Okay, so that's the overall concept of many to many relationship. So I don't know why I was using one to many on this side. Okay, so yeah, that's the concept of many to many relationship. So now we have discussed our this scenario, which is student and courses, and we have seen both the scenarios in which we are going right to left and left to right. Okay, so yeah, that's it for now. I think that's the overall concept of getting started with our TypeORM thing, and now I will just split this crash course into third part, in which we will just talk about the concepts which are left, which is obviously this one, on delete, nullable relation, and obviously we will talk something about cascade as well, and the only one thing which is left is obviously this query builder. Okay, so I will discuss the query builder and how we can create our complex queries with using this query builder. We will also discuss that. Okay, so yeah, that's all for this video. I hope you're liking my content. So if you're liking my content, so do like and subscribe the channel. We'll see you in our crash course part 3. Thanks for watching.